Hello, and welcome to Short Stories. I am your host, Martin. Today's story is based on one of the most important pieces of Old English literature, Beowulf. Beowulf is a heroic poem that was written over 1,000 years ago by an unknown author. It has been translated and rewritten countless times since then, and it continues to inspire artists, authors, and filmmakers to this day. What makes this story special is that it blends historical and mythical elements. It is also a clear example of warrior culture in the Dark Ages, a period in European history that was chaotic, impoverished, and poorly understood. Poems like Beowulf can teach us a lot about the people of the past and how they thought. Vocabulary: Thane. Thane. The king of Norway commanded many thanes. Mead. Mead. The guests drank gallons of mead at the party. Mayhem. Mayhem. The rioters caused widespread mayhem. Go Gaga 4. Go Gaga 4. Millions of people go gaga for Taylor Swift. Regale. Regale. The bard regaled the audience with an adventure story. Disarm. Disarm. The police disarmed the criminal. Foreshadowing and foreshadow. Foreshadowing and foreshadow. The first chapter foreshadows what will happen in the last chapter. Go way back. Go way back. My friend and I go way back. We met in kindergarten. Boast. Boast. The man boasted about his victory. The story. Long ago, in the age of heroes and monsters, there lived a noble king in Denmark. His name was Hrothgar. Fate showered him with success in battle. As you can imagine, this made him very wealthy and influential. He amassed a throng of thanes, wonderful warriors all. To reward them for their service, Hrothgar built a great mead hall in which to host wild parties. And they did indeed party, every night in fact. Not far from this mead-drenched hall was a fetid swamp, and in this swamp lived a malicious monster named Grendel. Grendel's ears were very sensitive, and he especially hated the sound of laughter. So when he heard the boisterous imbibing of the burly Danes, he wailed and whined in agony. After a few nights, he just couldn't take it any more. He marched out of his swamp, up the hill, and smashed his way into the heroes' hall. The thanes were in the midst of their midnight revel when Grendel arrived, so they were completely unprepared for the murderous mayhem the monster wrought. 30 brave men the monster felled, all fated to become Grendel's midnight snack. In the morning, when there was a chance to assess the damage, King Hrothgar fell to his knees, pulled on his beard, and wailed, "Who will save us from this hideous beast?" It was a long time before Hrothgar received an answer. 12 years, in fact. His prayers were finally answered when a mysterious hero arrived off the coast of Denmark. 15 men jumped out of their boat and waded through the surf to the shore. They were greeted by a watchman who addressed the tallest and most well-equipped member of their group. "This is King Hrothgar's land. State your name and business." The stately warrior stepped forward and said, "I am Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, prince of the Geats." The watchman's eyes widened, for he had heard tales of the battle-hardened Beowulf. "And what exactly is your purpose here?" asked the watchman politely. "I am here to rid you of your monster," replied Beowulf. "Right this way, sir," said the watchman as he led the Geats to Hrothgar's hall. At the hall, Beowulf was given a hero's welcome. He was seated next to King Hrothgar at the high table and given the most luxurious of meals. During the meal, one of Hrothgar's advisors, a law speaker by the name of Unferth, made a derisive comment about their guest. "Why is everyone going gaga for this Geat?" he complained. "I heard that he couldn't even win a swimming competition against my cousin Breca." Beowulf, unruffled by these comments, simply said, "You are clearly drunk, for you have messed up the story." Unferth scoffed and said, "Then enlighten us, Geat. What is the true story?" Beowulf took a large gulp of mead, stood up, and began his oration. "We two had been friends in our youth. One day we made a boyish boast that we could swim from end to end across the frigid Baltic. We two swam with swords in hands over the waves that fell on us like mountains. For 5 days and 5 nights we swam neck and neck until I was pulled under by a savage sea beast. I fought this fearsome foe in the briny depths. Gladly I prevailed by slicing it into sashimi. But just as I was reveling in my triumph, I was attacked once more by the monster's 8 horrid children. All through the night I battled these briny beasts. One by one I slew them with my merciless blade. By daybreak I was exhausted. I floated up to the surface and let the waves carry me to the shores of Finland. Never have I heard of Breca, nor anyone else for that matter, winning such a bitterly fought battle. And now I'd like to hand the floor to you, Unferth, so that you may regale us with your heroic exploits against Grendel." Beowulf sat down as the audience chuckled. Unferth's face turned sour. King Hrothgar clapped his hands and said, "A story like that deserves a toast." He called his wife to bring in the ceremonial drinking horn. The queen handed the horn to Beowulf. The hero stood at the head of the hall facing the audience. He raised his horn and said, "Tonight I either kill Grendel or die in this hall." The thanes cheered, and everyone chugged their mead. After all the mead and meat were consumed, the Danes retired to their huts, leaving Beowulf and his men alone in the mead hall. As the night wore on, Beowulf's men grew sleepier and sleepier. "Go to sleep," he ordered. "I will wake you when Grendel arrives." One of Beowulf's men, Wiglaf, asked, "Aren't you going to fall asleep too?" Beowulf laughed and said, "If I cannot defeat sleep, then I cannot defeat Grendel." He then put away his sword and began taking off his armor. "What are you doing, my lord?" asked Wiglaf. "Since Grendel is unarmed, it would be unheroic of me to fight him with an unfair advantage. I shall fight him hand to hand." Beowulf remained alert, while Wiglaf and the other men slept uneasily on the floor. Hours passed and nothing was heard or seen. Beowulf was sitting upright on the bench, keeping watch on the main door. He closed his eyes and held his breath. He heard the faintest rustling noise outside, like the sound a cat makes when it walks. Beowulf opened his eyes and muttered, "Grendel." No sooner did he say the word than Grendel burst through the door, screaming. The malodorous monster ripped the great door from its hinges and used it to bash a Geatish warrior across the room. Another warrior, who sadly was slow to rise to his feet, was gobbled up by the greedy Grendel. Beowulf sat watching Grendel carefully before jumping into action. The creature crashed across the hall, directly toward the noble hero. Just as Grendel was reaching out to grab him, that's when Beowulf made his move. He leaped from his bench and put the monster in a headlock. The two wrestled to the floor, knocking over chairs, smashing tables, and splintering benches. The other warriors kept their distance, fearful that they could get crushed in the brawl. Beowulf managed to get the upper hand by putting Grendel in an arm lock. "I got you now," he growled. Grendel, who had never fought a human with such strength before, was shocked and terrified. The beast tried desperately to escape, but Beowulf's grip was too tight. Grendel screamed in agony as he pulled harder. With one final yank, Grendel was free, and he ran out the door and kept running all the way to his swamp. But the creature had left something behind. His right arm! When the sun rose and the Danes gathered to see what had happened to their champion, they were amazed to discover a half-naked Beowulf holding Grendel's tattered, gory arm aloft like a trophy. "I have done it!" exclaimed Beowulf. "I have disarmed the enemy and brought peace to the land of Denmark." All of Denmark cheered Beowulf's victory, and Grendel's arm was hung above the door to the mead hall for all to see. King Hrothgar called for a feast to be held to celebrate. Meanwhile, the wounded Grendel had crawled back into his hole in the swamp, where he died whimpering. A pair of Danish watchmen were sent out to track the beast. They followed his trail of blood all the way back to the swamp, where they found his battle-beaten body. Shouts of "Grendel is dead!" were heard that evening in Hrothgar's hall. Never have you seen such joyous merrymaking as on that evening, when news of Grendel's demise was first made known. The king paid a bard a handsome fee to compose a song in honor of Beowulf. The bard sang his melody for all to hear at the feast. It was a song about a great hero who had killed a cruel dragon and won a great reward. Beowulf was touched. What beautiful foreshadowing, he thought. After the performance, the king approached Beowulf and said, "I knew your father, Beowulf, and I know that he would be very proud of you." Beowulf thanked the king for his kindness and said, "I know you and my father go way back. That's part of the reason I came, to pay off my father's debt to you." Hrothgar hugged Beowulf and said, "Consider it paid." The king then announced a toast in Beowulf's honor. Raising his golden cup aloft, the king declared, "To Beowulf! He has served me like a son, and I will return the favor by serving him like a father." As Beowulf stood there in front of the whole kingdom, he smiled and boasted, "My only regret is that I didn't rip Grendel's stinking head off." The crowd roared. For a while they all believed from the bottoms of their hearts that Beowulf was the greatest hero who had ever lived. But there was one observer who was not pleased. For her, Grendel's death was a cause for mourning, not celebration. "From the bottom of my heart," muttered the mysterious watcher from afar, "I hate you, Beowulf, and I will either get my revenge or die trying." There is much more to this story, but sadly we are short on time, so I will stop here. But if you are interested in learning how the story ends, there are several resources available for free online. The original poem might be too difficult for the average English language learner to understand. It's a bit hard for me to understand. But there are books about the poem that do a very good job of interpreting it and explaining its details. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote a pretty good book about it. You should check it out. The questions. Number 1. Why did Grendel attack the Danes? A. He was hungry. B. He was ordered to attack by his mother. C. The Danes attacked him first. D. He didn't like his noisy neighbors. The answer is D. He didn't like his noisy neighbors. Question 2. Why did Beowulf lose the swimming contest? A. He only had one arm. B. He was attacked by a sea monster. C. He couldn't swim. D. He swam backwards. The answer is B. He was attacked by a sea monster. Question 3. How did Beowulf defeat Grendel? A. He shot him with a gun. B. He stabbed him with a sword. C. He hit him with a truck. D. He disarmed him. The answer is D. He disarmed him. Question 4. How did Beowulf handle Unferth's criticism? A. By boasting. B. By losing his temper. C. By crying. D. By complaining to the king. The answer is A. By boasting.